So welcome everybody to the second hour of Mind Shifters Radio. Today is Wednesday, May the 19th, 2021, and our calling number is 563-999-3581, and press 1, and that puts you into queue to talk to us. And we'd love to hear your comments and questions because that makes this your show. Give Michael a moment to get dialed in. I'll direct you to our website again, which is whyagain.org. And you click on the Start Here button in the upper left corner, or scroll down and hit the bullseye in the middle of the page. They'll both take you to the same place, and it's where you will find all the tools. And we invite you to put them to work in your life and see the changes that happen. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you, dear heart, and welcome everybody. Honored once again, delighted that you're here as we advance this understanding of first century Aramaic forgiveness beyond the norm of the culture's belief in forgiveness into the actual process that was taught 2,000 years ago about how to change the content of your mind. We have a culture that's, let's be kind about it, has told us a huge untruth about forgiveness. We have a culture that's told us that, of course, the only reason I'm in pain is because of what you did, but it's okay, I'll forgive you. I'll let you off the hook because I'm in pain. And, of course, somebody's done something that's untoward, something that's off base. It's a nice thing to say, I'm going to let you off the hook. I'll be big about it. I'll be generous. I'll be compassionate. But if I do that thing, I've done nothing to change the content of my mind, which is the source of my pain. All pain comes from pain's content. It doesn't come from what other people do. So once we wake up to that, once we realize that, then we have the opportunity to start to change the content of our minds. And of course, to change the content of your mind, how many times have you said it? You have a rage response with somebody every time they do whatever, thus and so. And one day you hear that it's all about love and you say, I got it. That's it. It's about love. And you say in particular to that special person in your life, I understand that it's all about love, and so from now on, I'm going to be loving with you. And that's your absolute, total, complete commitment. You mean it with every fiber of your being. And that's what you do, right? You function lovingly with them until they give you the look and resonate your pain again. And then what happens? You're back in the same old boat. Until you change the content of your mind, you can't get out of the boat. And so the objective of our work together here is to build the brain cells for a deep and broad shift and change of the way we understand and see the world. To really change perception in a way that until first century Aramaic forgiveness came along, we couldn't even comprehend changing. So that's what we're here to do. And we're honored and delighted that you're part of the process. If you never pick up a pen and do a worksheet, engage in forgiveness, the simple fact of hearing it starts to change something in your mind and carries the energy of that change into the world. There's a physics teacher that 2,000 years ago said, a little leavening leavens the whole loaf. And we are here to leaven the whole loaf of humanity. He wasn't talking about bread. He was talking about changing the minds of the world, moving from the world mind. We have this thing we could call the world mind. The world mind believes in hate and fear and intimidation and punishment and drama and trauma. And everybody else is the cause of my pain. It is a huge piece of work to shift out of that mind. It's not just a matter of, you push the button and you change the power supply of your mind. If you live in a world where your mind is fueled by hostility or fear, and you want to live a true human life, then you're going to have to shift your mind to where it's fueled by the active presence of love. That's the kind of shift we're talking about. And doing that is a process. The reason we're here long-term with this radio show, the reason why we do this week after week after week after week, is so that the conversation is alive and supports as many people as are ready to do the work in making that monumental shift of a mind fueled by a mind that trusts hostility and fear into a mind that is connected to and literally fueled by the presence of active love. So that's our objective here, and we're honored and delighted that you're here to be part of the process. Ms. Jeannie, do we have everybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room? I think you mute channel, Jeannie.
I meant to unmute myself and I hung up on myself.
Ouch.
So I had to dial back in. Nobody has a hand up and there's no questions in the chat room. So go for the reading. I don't hear you now, Michael. Hello, Michael.
That is because I was reaching for the book and I wasn't speaking. So let's look into the next step in our conversation with our character, Richard. Richard, if you haven't been around for the reading that we're doing to open or to participate in the radio show, is we're reading the book Why Is This Happening to Me Again, a book that I wrote back in the mid to late 90s. Actually, I wrote it from the mid-80s to the mid-90s. And so we're taking a couple of paragraphs each day and looking at the principles of why is this happening to me again, how to move out of unconscious creation into conscious creation. And so we're on chapter 11, which is titled Processing and Going Unconscious. And so we're talking to Richard about how energies have been suppressed from experiences that have not been dealt with, and how we're going to move out of being controlled by those energetic patterns into conscious creation. And that is done by undoing the unconscious dynamics. So we've just been talking about, how holding on to suppressed energies and dissociated energies from an old experience will lead one to trauma and pain. And he's asked the question, why am I in pain if there's error? Why am I the one who's there every time? Of course, the question we suggest people ask themselves when they realize that here they are in that same old pain again, and the circumstance seems to be totally, completely changed. But why am I here with this again? I'm here with this again because my mind is producing it. And so I offer him we've been talking a lot about the Aramaic, so I offer him in the Aramaic scriptures, this is the issue that was being referenced when they said, beware you who judge another, for that in which you judge another, you have been guilty of practicing. When I'm in some kind of turmoil, pain, trauma, hostility, or fear, and I think I'm looking at you do a behavior, and I interpret that behavior a certain way, my mind is interpreting your behavior to mean what it would mean if I did that behavior. So when you say, oh, I watched you do thus and so, and I'm really angry about it, and here's what it means that you did that, it may not mean that. I mean, it might be accurate. It might mean that about them. But chances are it doesn't mean that at all to them. But what you're telling them is what it would mean if you did that behavior. When you realize that the meanings that your mind gives to things tell you first about you, and the first order of business is to clean up the hostility and fear-based mind, then everything changes. So when you judge another, you're in some form of hostility or fear, judgment toward another, then you've been playing the same game and hiding it from yourself. And so I then asked Richard to let's take a look at the Aramaic concept of sin. And I offer to him the thought that I think you will find it will tie this all together in a way that makes sense. And I invite you to notice how practical and informative these Aramaic ideas are when you see them in the context of real life. So the Aramaic language is the root language of at least 5 of the world's major religions. It's suspected that a 6th, Buddhism, is also rooted in the Aramaic, but we don't know for sure. There's some pretty good evidence that it is. And these world religions didn't come out of the Aramaic because there's anything inherently religious about the Aramaic language. These world religions came out of the Aramaic language because when they were initiated, they worked, because in the Aramaic language they understood how the mind, how the body, how the interaction with the world, how the creative process worked. It was understood. And so if it was understood and it worked, people went, oh, well, let's turn it into something. And then once they turned it into something and they weren't doing their own work, they had to turn it into something that would make them money and give them control and power over others. So we see, if you look at, let's talk about this thing they call Christianity. There are today some 32,000 plus sects of Christianity. Everybody making it up in a way that they're right and the other 31,999 are in error. And if I was born into this one, then this must be the right one. Because they drummed so much trauma and fear and pain into me. In fact, they told me that my wisdom began with fear of the Creator, that I have to believe that this has got to be the truth. And it's nothing but a huge crock. And it's time for us to become aware of that. Underlying these Aramaic concepts, which in so many cases were turned into religions, is an understanding of the true principles of how life works. And what we're looking to do is to go back to the meaning of those first century Aramaic words and understand what they mean, again, in the context of real life. And so Richard throws back, here we go again, Michael. I don't know whether to love you or hate you. I feel inspired and overwhelmed at the same time. It seems like the more I hear of what you say, the more work I realize I have to do. Does it ever end? And I offer back to him, I'm not sure when the end comes. Again, I remind you, it's a process. Your feeling overwhelmed is pretty much on track for where you are. Almost everyone cycles through this stage several times as they learn this work. The healing accelerates as you develop the capacity to hold the space of conscious, active, present love while unresolved issues surface. There's a big sentence to unpack. Healing accelerates as you develop the capacity to hold the space of conscious, active, present love while unresolved issues surface. Now, the mind trusts, for most people in our culture, fear, anger, anguish. Look what's wrong with you. And they believe that when their mind is in some form of hostility or fear, that their mind's actually telling them the truth about somebody else. When the fact is, when we're in hostility or fear, the only thing the mind, it's twisted in the way it does it, but the only thing the mind is telling you is about what's true about you. So Richard responds with conscious what? He sputtered. I can't even say it, let alone do it. What does that mean? That's a key question. And before we get into an emotionally loaded concept, like sin, let's talk about the power of holding the space of love and how to do it, I suggested. And we finish this chapter out on page 69 of the book with a key thought that says, is remembering to use the tools and then using them a difficult way to live? No. What is truly difficult is living life without the tools. You know, the world says, oh, but it's so hard to apply forgiveness every time. It's so hard. Well, you know what's hard? What's hard is living out of an hostility and fear-based mind that has no idea and has no interest in removing its hostility or fear, has no interest in forgiveness. That's hard. It's tough to live in a world of why is this happening to me again? I've repeated hate and rage and anger and guilt and grief and condemnation and gossip and slander and vengeance and blame. That's a hard way to live. And yes, it takes effort. Now, why do people stay in the hostility and fear-based world? Because it takes no effort. The mind is already habituated into that stuff. So it's not hard to do your work. It takes effort. It takes effort to shift out of an hostility and fear-based response to someone and really take responsibility for making sure your mind is connected to love before you open your mouth. That takes effort, but it is the easy way to live, because what happens is when you live that way, you disappear the drama and trauma game. You start to live in a whole different world. You know, when you realize that between your ears there is a world, it's called the world of perception. And when perception is based in hostility or fear, it totally and it's completely telling you lies about everything. Now, once you correct that mind, the mind will move out of telling you lies, and it will give you inaccurate information about what's actually going on. That's what happens. It doesn't lie anymore. It just doesn't give you accurate information about what's happening in the actuality of your experience. Well, wait a minute, Michael. What does that mean? Where do we even go with that? Well, I used an example last week. We have a mosquito in the room. The mosquito does not look around the room and say, oh, a ceiling fan. Oh, a light. Oh, a television set. A dresser, a desk, a bed, a chair, a cushion, a pillow. Doesn't say that. The mosquito's perceptual system is designed to ensure its survival. Food. That's what the mosquito's perceptual system is designed for. Survival. Your perceptual system, while you're living in an hostility and fear-based mind, is designed for survival. And you know, that's a good thing. But survival means that your life, because it's the dog-eat-dog game and you're living in hostility or fear, which are damaging energies, which are destructive energies to physiology, yes, physiology will get to survive through the hostility and fear-based world, but it's not going to last very long because it's designed for survival, and survival is traumatic. I remember one day, and bless his heart, for everybody that knows or knew Patrick Quinn, I remember the first year that Patrick was at Heartland, and he had just come out of a pretty heavy-duty place. He flushed a bunch of drugs down the toilet. drugs that he was on, for post-traumatic stress disorder and such from the military. And I remember one day he came rushing into Heartland, into the Heart Center, and he was like, I got it. He's like, and he had been out in the woods, and we do have ticks and chiggers in Missouri. And he's like, if I'm connected to love and I'm out there in the woods, I am not part of the food chain. We're out of the survival mode. Now, the perceptual constructs life can offer us will teach us how to truly incarnate as love and to thrive as human beings, not just survive as the hostility and fear-based world would teach us. There's a place for it, in a dog-eat-dog world. Boy, that old hostility and fear-based mind can be really, really life-saving, no question about it. But again, while, the 87th time you have to run from the bear or the enemy, you can live through that, but living in the kind of chemistry that comes from that kind of fear is going to make your life short. And it's a stage in the process of development. But here we are now. If we know how to live, and, this was so profound for Patrick to have come up with, and bless your heart, Patrick, now that you've left your body behind, holding you in our hearts. But when he came up with, when I'm connected to love, and he'd been out in the woods, and, the ticks and chiggers are getting him, and all of a sudden he's like, if I shift into love, I'm not in the food chain. It's not a survival world anymore. Now, a whole new world of perception opens up, one that is more based in the actuality of what's possible for a human being. The actuality of what conscious, active, present love is designed for can start to show up in the perceptual system. And now, that which not gets us food, enables us to mate, allows us to survive, that's one perceptual mindset. It's got its place. But we're talking about going way, way, way beyond that. And this is, in essence, what Yeshua 2,000 years ago came to bring us. When they said, "What's this all about? What are we doing here? What if I want to live as a human being? What do I have to do?" And in Aramaic, he didn't say love, as the Greeks would tell us, love God, love neighbor as yourself. What he said was have Rachma active in your mind when you think of the Creator, when you think of neighbor, in order to maintain self. And he tells us, I came to bring you life and bring you life more abundantly. In other words, I came to take you out of the survival world and move you into a place where you could perceive what the ultimate plan was for your life and live in that, which means where you could thrive. And so when we face and process through the unconscious behavior prompts that would keep us in hostility or fear, we shift the whole perceptual system into something new. And when that becomes part of your automatic decision system, then everything changes. And that's the change that we're here to inspire, to support, and of course, to learn ourselves, because we're still just human beings like everybody else in process of moving into that higher space. So we're glad you're here to listen to the conversation, and if we can be of any support, if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you, our call-in number is 563-999-3581, 563-999-3581. If you call that number, you'll be listening to the show. And then, if you push 1, that will raise a hand in the control panel, And Jeannie will recognize you and introduce you by your area code and say welcome. We'll have a conversation. So how can we support you? What's on your mind? 563-999-3581 if you're on one of those stations where we can't see you. And Miss Jeannie, do we have anybody in the phone queue with a hand up or anything happening in the chat room?
No, it is all quiet. Bob is in the chat room with us. This is Lisa. And Bob says,
hey there, young man, young lady.
becomes their home for life until you consciously choose to change it. Right?
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, we have 34 minutes.
So let's have a conversation. If you're out there in the chat room, push 1. Or, pardon me, if you're out there in the phone queue, push 1. Let's have a conversation. How can we support you? Does what I've just said to Richard make sense for you? Is this whole, the difference between surviving and thriving make sense? Shifting the perceptual system to serve the ability to thrive rather than to serve the ability to survive. The perceptual system in a dog-eat-dog world has served very well in keeping us alive. But if you look at people even at the highest levels, all the money you can imagine, all the the niceties, all the things, and they're still living in survival mode. Actually, we've been watching a new series on Netflix called The Kaminsky Method. Someone, and I don't remember who it was that recommended it to us, but it's really quite hilarious, and there's some really powerful, profound stuff in it. And it's Alan Arkin and who's the other actor?
Michael Douglas.
Michael Douglas. And they're aging. And one of them is extremely wealthy, extremely successful. The other one has been trying for a long time and living in the survival world. There's some, kind of rough language in it. Unfortunately, I don't know why they need to put language and concepts like they do in some of these things. But beyond that, if you can overlook that, it's just really pretty powerfully done to watch these guys. And neither of them, as well as they've done, Michael Douglas is an acting coach. He's been an actor all his life, and he's teaching this thing he calls, his name's Kaminsky, and he teaches the Kaminsky method. And Alan Arkin is his agent, who's got this mega Los Angeles talent agency worth millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. And they're both pretty miserable. There's no thriving in either of them with all that they have, and all they've got. And some of the issues that they look at and they face, because they're still stuck in survival mode. And the two of them are hilarious. The way that they play off of each other is kind of reminiscent. Jeannie brought up the thought. It's kind of like the movie Grumpy Old Man. The way that these two actors play off of each other, how dry their sense of humor is and how they interact. And, it's just, it's really such a profound portrayal in the context of this conversation, a profound portrayal of people who've got everything you can imagine in the so-called world, but there's no joie de vivre. There's no presence of love in their lives. There's just survival and trauma, when both of them are well beyond survival and could be just laughing and in a life of the luxury of being and the presence of love. And they're still trying to make it through survival. Very entertaining and some pretty profound points being made. So you might want to check out the Kaminsky Method on Netflix. It's I think it's only a couple of seasons long, but it's pretty good, pretty well done. Ignore the language.
Your microphone just went muted a little bit, Michael.
Oh, excuse me,
muffled.
Is that better? Okay. Well, I'm back. So if you're out there in the phone queue, push 1. Let's have a conversation. How can we support you? We're here to offer support for these tools of forgiveness. And, of course, if you haven't engaged in the forgiveness process yet, go to our website, whyagain.org. In the upper left-hand corner, push the button that says Start Here. And that'll walk you through literally many hours of support in how to shift out of survival, out of the hostility and fear mode, into the presence of love and truly functioning as love, out of love, as love. And you can do the worksheet process right there on the worksheet, on the website, and or you can go to your app store in your phone and download free the world's only forgiveness app. Type in the words Heartland, H-A-R-T-L-A-N-D, one word, Aramaic, A-R-A-M-A-I-C, forgiveness, and download the app, and you can start to use it there. Excuse me, sweetie, I was halfway through a thought there. Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. It's off topic, but I got a text from Julie, and so I know you had checked onto this, so you might have a better answer for her. She's on T-Mobile, which we had been on, and she tries to dial into Blog Talk, and it tells her they're going to charge her so much per minute to dial it. And I told her I know that happened to us when we were on T-Mobile. I can't remember exactly what the issue was.
Yeah, well, T-Mobile plays this game of you get unlimited long distance, but that's not actually true. The Blog Talk, I guess, the telephone companies are charged a small amount, like a penny a minute, in order to access the phone lines. So those phone lines are not included with T-Mobile. However, we can probably give you a different number. There are several different numbers, and so let's check and see what number you have. And I know that the last time that happened, we just recently switched out of T-Mobile, and that was one of the reasons, is because they wanted to charge us to call in to do the show. And but T-Mobile did have a different number for us, and we weren't being charged.
Well, we had a different host. We had a different host number.
Right.
I'm only seeing one guest calling number.
563.
Now, if you can get, right, 563. Now, if you can get on your computer and, you can Skype in or what were some of the other ways that people were calling in? Through WhatsApp maybe or
I think it was
Facebook?
I don't remember the name of the other app. There was another app that they could get in with. Pardon me. But maybe, maybe we can send Blog Talk a note and ask them if they've got another dial-in number that they can use where they won't be charged.
Okay.
I
did send them a note saying that people were having trouble.
Say again?
Right. I already did send a tech support note that they were having trouble dialing in, that it was wanting to charge them. So I will text again and ask them if they have another guest call-in number.
Yeah. See what happens.
Yeah.
Our apology.
Oh, so Bob just said Google Hangouts no longer works. Or Hangouts.
Hangouts, yeah. That was the other one.
It doesn't.
Hangouts.
He says it doesn't work any longer either.
Yeah, they've deleted that one.
Yeah.
But you can call in on Skype. If you put Skype on your phone, you can come in through Skype. It's free. Skype to Skype. So we've got about 25 minutes left. If you're out there in listener land, how can we support you? What's on your mind? I'm complete with the thoughts I was planning to present, and so if you're out there with a question,
a hand just went up. Area code 417. You're in the air.
Well, good afternoon, Jeannie and Michael. It's Judy from Missouri.
Hey.
Well, hey there, young lady. Welcome. Good to hear your voice. How are you?
I'm doing good. I have a question about the Aramaic language and the Aramaic Bible. if these people had this information, why haven't they been using it?
When you say these people, which people do you mean?
The culture, the Aramaic culture.
Well, if you take a look into the Aramaic culture, people have been using it for many years. In fact, we spent some time in California with some folks who were native Aramaic-speaking peoples. And just like language changes here, let's say, for instance, let's take when you were 20
Hawaii
years
was
of
a
age.
good example.
Yeah, let's take when you were 20 years of age, Judy. I know you're about 35 now, but let's take back when you were 20. If somebody had written you a note and said, I'm having really a gay life and a gay time, you'd have gone, oh, that's great, you're having such a good time. But if somebody writes to you today and says, I'm having a really gay life, it doesn't mean the same thing as it meant back when you were 20. Word meanings change, and that's one of the games. In fact, you've heard me say it before that Vladimir Lenin probably responsible for more deaths on planet Earth than any human being in all of history. And he wrote, if you change the meaning of a culture's words, you can destroy that culture. And so when word meanings are changed, one of the key words that we had worked on with 25 different translators, this goes back into the 70s, was what was the meaning of the word that Yeshua used when they asked him what's most important, and he says, have Rachma, for the Creator, for neighbor, in order to maintain self. We were working with this community out in California, and we had arrived at our understanding from the work that we've done for Rachma, and we asked this community. And the answer that we got is, we don't know what that word means anymore. Its meaning has been lost. But, they said, here's what our tradition tells us, that it is the most important jewel that you can have. That's a very accurate description of having this filter in the frontal lobes of the brain that is a gateway for love to enter the human form. Describing that as the most beautiful jewel you could have is pretty much on target. But unfortunately, the meaning of the word had been lost. So we've seen people, in fact, initially there was the Syrian Orthodox Church sent priests to America to try to establish. They still use the Aramaic language in their church services, in their liturgy and all. And the word liturgy in that language means our common work. Today people go to church to, who knows, do all kinds of things, but not very often that they're there to do their work together. So many word meanings have been changed and lost that until the original meanings are restored, it's going to be pretty hard to follow along with that teaching and produce a culture based in that teaching. Jeannie, you had an example in mind from being in Hawaii?
Oh, yeah. When we took the kids to Hawaii about 12 years ago, and Ryan planned to propose to Gabby while we were there, and he wanted to do it in Hawaiian. And he asked probably for 3 days, every Hawaiian person, he'd ask them, how do you say, will you marry me, in Hawaiian? And they couldn't even answer it. And we also, during one of the church services, we asked them if they could translate the my commitment into Hawaiian, and they said, why would we do that? Everybody speaks English. And we couldn't get a volunteer to translate that into Hawaiian. So it's, those are just two examples here just within the last few years of people who were losing their language.
Yeah, and if you look historically, Judy, where there, the non-being mind is based in conquest. And if you look historically at conquest, one of the first things And I don't care who it is, when the so-called Christian church came to America, the conquest of America, one of the first things they did is they worked to destroy the language, the understanding of life, and the traditions of the Native American culture. I mean, they did everything they could to destroy it. They outlawed the language. They murdered people for speaking their Native American languages. They stole children. There's actually a very powerful movie which we watched recently, and the name was Indian. Gene, do you remember what it was? Indian
Horse.
Indian Horse.
Indian Horse.
And you watch how profoundly the church worked to make sure that the culture was destroyed. The original understanding was destroyed because they were coming in to replace it with what they wanted people to live by. And if you look at all conquests throughout all of history, virtually every one of them has been about, we're going to destroy the existing culture. One of the things about in Hawaii that, and it's in our lifetime that this has happened, that literally the kingdom of Hawaii, it was a separate sovereign country in our lifetime, and it was stolen by America. I mean, literally, if you look at the history, businessmen went in, they stood by with the military and threatened in order to depose the monarchy and take that country. And they outlawed the Hawaiian language. One of the things the native Hawaiians shared with us when we were there, we heard this from the lips of one of the Hawaiian peoples there, is when the missionaries came here, they had Bibles and we had land. Now we have Bibles. And they said the missionaries came here to do good, and they did well. They stole the land, they stole the country, the quote-unquote Christian people. And, that's when the mindset of hostility or fear is active and has never been resolved. Unfortunately, that is what happens. And there is a purposeful destruction of the language and the culture of anyone who's doing conquest. So that would be some of the reasons why we've had to work very diligently to restore the first century meanings of the Aramaic words and then bring it into the laboratory of the classroom to get it back to full understanding where it was workable again. Does that address your question?
That really helps a lot. I know whenever you were working as an electrician, or you were moved by the language and how it fit in with what you already knew about the body. Could you tell us a little bit or refresh us on that?
Well, I've never worked as an electrician, but my original work was in electronics with a side study in physics. And when I first went to medical school, studying naturopathy, what became very clear to me was that the body, the so-called body, was an energy system. And I started to apply what I understood from the world of physics and energy system theory to healing and to the body. So that's what's led to a lot of understanding of this work. And then when I touched into the Aramaic teachings of Yeshua, what I recognized was that this is not a language of theology. This is a language of physics and physiology and psychology and genetics. And so part of my conscious purpose in developing this work has been to learn to and build the brain cells to be able to express it in as many conceptual languages as possible. I mean, I can go into a room filled with physicists and explain first century Aramaic forgiveness totally and completely in terms of physics, never using a line from the ancient scriptures, and the physicists will walk away scratching their heads saying, we can't live long term without forgiveness. I could sit with medical doctors and use medical language And, they're going to scratch their heads and say, God, the body can't survive without forgiveness. And you can walk into the realm of psychology and say, until we deal with the unconscious and start to clean up the heart, two of the words from the Aramaic, or one of the words from the Aramaic, then forgiveness becomes key. So I've purposely, consciously worked to understand in as many conceptual languages as possible how to speak the first century Aramaic teachings. And what my experience is that when people hear the truth in one conceptual language, they go, well, that's interesting, and that's fun, and they go on with their lives. But when they hear it in several conceptual languages simultaneously, it tends to sink in at a deeper level and create gut level change. And that's what we're looking to do, is to create that gut level change. Is that the piece of information you were looking for?
Yeah, I really don't have the words for how I want to describe this, but it is amazing to me how you could take and compare all of this in so many ways back into bringing it together so we can understand it. And I thank you for that. And though I've been doing the work for several years, I'm still really new at it. I don't think that I will ever get 100% at it, but I am at times. And I just want to thank you for that, and thank you for explaining that. And I'm really interested in I've got a little dog that comes and visits me every day, and I'm trying to get him his snack before he gets too upset. So I want to turn the phone off. I'm going to get off of the line, but I'll still be listening. Thank you.
Okay, we appreciate you. Visitors, cool. Well, I hear you loud and clear, Judy, and I'll say that I also oftentimes feel like I'm brand new at this work. And, the analogy that I've come up with for that is it's like, here I am. It's the tough work of climbing this mountain and struggle and strife and get to the top of the mountain and think, look at this. I'm just 15 feet from the peak and I'm on top of the mountain. And I get that last 15 feet and all of a sudden now I can see there are another 50 mountain ranges in front of me that are twice as high. And when you hit one of those mountains and you're like, oh, man, I finally got it. And then you get to the peak and you look and you go, oh, my God, I've just started. When you realize, the Harvard research that says that in a time frame where 10,000 brain cells are firing, the max amount of information that goes into conscious awareness is 9 bits. So we have 9 pieces of information that formulate this survival perceptual construct that we have. I don't know how many bits of information go into the mosquito's mind in order to show it infrared, and there's where blood is in food. I'm not sure, how many bits would go into that mind. But Harvard tells us that, 10,000 brain cells are firing that can measure 10,000 units of electrical activity moving in the brain, and the max amount of data in that time frame that goes into our perception is 9 bits. And it's been estimated that in that same time frame, the actuality, what's actually in the creation in front of us while we're looking at 9 bits of data is perhaps as much as 20 trillion bits of data. And so each time I get to another mountaintop, if I'm at the 1 million bits of information mountaintop, which is pretty huge compared to 10,000 brain cells firing at 9 bits of data. If I get to the 1 million, it's like, wow, this is awesome. I'm coming to the peak. And then I look out and then I see, well, there's a 10 million mountain peak in front of me. I haven't even started. And I climb to the 10 million mountain peak and I'm getting to the top and think I've really accomplished something. And then I see the 100 million mountain range in front of me. And then the billion and the trillion, So it's a process. I don't know that any of us will ever get to the point where we'll have full comprehension of the actuality, but I do know that, at least from my experience, for me personally, and the people that I've worked with, life just becomes so much more rewarding as we open to moving from survival based in hostility or fear into really, truly thriving as human beings as we're designed to live. So thank you for being part of the process. And, Judy, if you haven't met Judy, she was at Heartland the first year we opened back in 1989, and has spent many, many years at Heartland over the summer between 1989 and today. And in fact, last time Heartland was open, which is 2 years ago now, with COVID happening, we didn't open last summer. And of course, with COVID still going on, we haven't opened this summer. I'm not sure what will happen for next summer yet. We'll see how things unfold. But thank you, Judy, for the help. When I was closing up 2 summers ago, you came down and were really a huge amount of help with getting Heartland closed up and ready for the winter. So, muchas gracias. And Miss Jeannie, we've got about 10 minutes. Do we have anybody else out there? 8 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. No.
I don't know what's happened to my atomic clock in here. My atomic clock says we've got 10, and it's supposed to be tuned to the national, electronically reset by this national electronic clock, but who knows?
Oh, well.
It's probably correct, and Blog Talk is probably off, but
it could be. It could be. So, I'm not sure that we can do it in 8 minutes, but we could process through what came up for me this morning, and I know I need to lay down and breathe, but
okay.
We've had...
well, let's do that after the show, and, let's talk about it.
We've had the occupational therapists and physical therapists and nurses and different ones come and do home care for Dad, and basically the occupational therapist this morning said that they've seen a decline in just the 3 weeks they've been working with him, and unless they can show that what they're doing creates an improvement, that insurance won't cover it. And so the occupational therapy has ended as of today. A lot of noise on your end, Michael.
Oh, excuse me. I'll hit the mute button.
And the physical therapy, they said we've got 4 more weeks of that. And if they don't see an improvement, the same thing will happen there. And right now they're shorthanded and they don't have an aide that can come in and help. She did suggest that with Dad's, the gait with which he walks indicates that there's some neurological deficiency. And so I've got an appointment scheduled for him next week to see our physician, who is more like Michael. He's more of a naturopath and looks at things naturally, and get his assessment, and then if need be, have Dad set up to see a neurologist. And they said, if that is the case and they can give him some medication, which, we don't like to do, but if they can give him something that will help his neurological deficiency to improve to the point where they can come back and work with him. But right now, Dad's cognition, they ask him to do something or, to move or walk or to whatever, and he forgets it within 30 seconds. And so them telling him this is what you need to do to improve, I can sit there and listen to him and then I can have him do it. But for Dad to do it, he's got to have direction. He can't remember it to do it, even for bathing himself or whatever. So it really came up and triggered me to the point
Breathe in, Mr. Sweetie.
Yeah, it's like...
Breathe, let your breath open.
Just helpless. I would almost rather, I almost hate to say this out loud, but I would rather him pass than get to the point where he can't do anything, or where it's to where we'd have to put him in a home or something. I could handle that news better, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure where this is all coming from. I mean, it's just a helplessness, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't even know where to start working on it.
Yeah. Well, we'll do some press work after the show, but my offering would be that another component is that I think that his faculties are shutting down and he's getting ready to leave. And that's an underlying piece of grief that's processing, I think, for you, sweetie. And giving him permission to let go of his body and move to the next level of his eternal life is a challenge for us as children. So I suspect both things are going on. And, the way your mom passed so suddenly, I think energetically it's not been fully resolved yet. And so I just join you and hold the space for opening to let all of that move. To let that space right under your soft palate open. Let loose. Breathe fully.
And the breathing part's been challenged lately, and that's probably a manifestation of that. I had gotten over it, and it started back up last night. I woke up this morning, my throat hurting again. So y'all just hold the space.
Next layer. And of course, all that happened. Go ahead.
I was just going to say we did have a good piece of news. My brothers have worked it out to take vacation to work around keeping Dad for 10 days in July so we can go up and see the new grandbaby, which we haven't seen, and she'll be a year old in August.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty awesome that that's happening. And, of course, in the context of Dad's cognitive decline and such, and physical decline, after the therapist left, he came back in the kitchen. We finished our game of dominoes, and he beat us both.
Yeah. But it funny times. I mean, like the therapist this morning asked him how old he was, and he said, well, I was born in 1932. He goes, yeah, so how old does that make you? And he goes, well, what is this, this is 2021. So he did know what year it was. And he said, yeah. And he goes, well, subtract 1932 from 2021. He said, that's how old I am. And my dad was an accountant, so for him to not even do the math, that was just kind of hilarious. But we're down to the last minute, and I just asked everybody to hold the space. I'll be breathing afterwards.
Okay, sweetie, we hold the space with you. We hold you in our hearts and cherish you, and hold Dad, too. Everybody, we hold the space for you to have the best year yet of your eternal lives. It's an awesome gift to give the world. The world needs it. You can give it. You deserve it. Blessings.